Hey everybody, I'm Katallina, and today we're talking about episode 7 of Demon Slayer season 4. I was already pretty glad when I heard that we were going to be getting some extended episodes for this episode and the last episode of the season. But I was even more pleasantly surprised when I realized with this episode that the reason for an extension was actually to make room to be able to really delve in to Gyomei and to really get his story, because there was a lot going on here. And the thing is, this isn't backstory for backstory's sake. If you pay attention to the way that Tanjiro behaves and the way that his story is going and everything, and you place him up against the situations that Gyomei has actually endured, you really quickly come to realize just how much these two characters actually have in common, and it's quite fascinating. What we see with Gyomei's backstory is the reality that he actually took care of a bunch of orphaned kids, which to me ties back to Tanjiro being the man of the house when we see him at the start of the series, looking after his mother and his little siblings. We then see the reality that they have their lives impacted by demons. Now, to be clear and fair, in Tanjiro's case, there was no actual betrayal, of course. But in this situation, one of the kids doesn't follow the rules that Gyomei has for them, and does not return before evening and ends up being spotted by a demon, and he makes a deal with the demon not to eat him if he leads the demon back to the orphanage with the kids and with Gyomei. And he does so willingly, and he dashes out the wisteria incense that Gyomei uses to try and make sure demons don't come in. I suppose the closest thing we have to that is actually Nezuko's struggles and becoming a demon, which of course were not her fault. And I mean, it's complicated when we ask ourselves how much the situation was actually the kid's fault, because we're talking about a kid. I mean, on the other hand, yes, what he did was absolutely reprehensible, and the consequences were nightmarish, but in all of these situations, one of the things that Gyomei actually talks about to Tanjiro is the reality that he has a very hard time trusting people, and that he's extremely cautious when it comes to kids, because whether kids have any ill intent or not, kids can actually do some very damaging things. And he's not wrong about that, especially in a world that is facing the kinds of problems that the Demon Slayer world is facing. Now, the interesting thing about this whole situation that goes down with these kids and with Gyomei defending them and this demon coming in is how varied the reactions are. 4 of the children are instantly killed. Whoop! Nothing we can do about it. Which again makes me think of the situation with Tanjiro's siblings. And then 3 of the children that are left out of the other 4 actually decide to flee Gyomei and to try and escape the demon themselves. Likely because they were too scared and weren't thinking logically. When you're in a crisis situation, it doesn't matter how much authority somebody above you actually has. If you are scared and you are not thinking clearly, and this is for an adult, man, this isn't even for a kid, you are going to have a higher chance of screwing up. And that is absolutely what happens here. And 3 of those 4 kids get absolutely wrecked. The last child, the child who offered Gyomei the fish, which I thought was beautiful, actually stays where he has instructed her to, and he fights the demon. Now here's the problem. This is a 4-year-old little girl. She has no concept, I would assume, of what a demon actually is. And even if she had some kind of theoretical concept, at least in a basic structure, she still wouldn't necessarily understand what was going on. Also, this was an incredibly bloody and violent altercation where he beat the actual crap out of something. He ripped its arms off. I mean, this was ugly. And I'm not criticizing him for the reality that it was ugly. There was no other way about it. He was trying to save her life and his own. And one of the things I really liked about this particular situation is the reality that up till this point, up until this happened, Gyomei had no idea what his actual strength was. He just thought he was an average normal guy living an average normal life, despite the situation he was in, and despite his vision problems, the fact that he's blind. So that was interesting to see. And I think we see a lot of that in Tanjiro. I keep mirroring the two because to me the two are actually a really beautiful mirror, and it's very interesting. Because Tanjiro didn't start out like planning to become a demon slayer or anything. He ended up becoming a demon slayer because of the tragedy that unfolded with his family and the desperate need and desire to try and find a way to save Nezuko. So I think that's also really interesting, and I think it's really fascinating that we see that with a lot of characters that we run into in this series. Like we have a situation with Zenitsu and his whole mess. We have the situation with Inosuke and his situation, which I will not list here. You'll learn about it down the road. But trust me, oh man, his story is something, my friends. But like every character, like the Wind Hashira is the one I really want to talk about today when we get there, because if we think about the situation that he and Genya have been through versus what Gyomei has experienced and how different the two of them actually react to the situation they have endured, it's really fascinating. The saddest thing about this whole situation, of course, is that when adults actually come and find the situation, the little girl actually ends up telling them, supposedly, that Gyomei is the one who killed the children. Now, it's a very tough thing to see what actually happened here. It's possible that the child dealt with some kind of PTSD or some kind of like cognitive dissonance where her brain literally rewired itself to tell her that that is literally what she saw and that was a literal truthful statement from her. Or it's entirely possible that she had no way to describe what had actually attacked the children because demons disappear after they die, like they disperse or whatever. Or it's possible, given the size of each of the characters that were fighting and the fact that the little girl was cowering in the corner, that either she closed her eyes and didn't see the fight at all, or that she couldn't actually see the attacker. So there are a variety of different things that could have actually gone down there. Overall, though, the thing that really broke my heart about the situation is that the thing that Gyomei wanted most was for the little girl to just thank him for saving her life. And I mean, that is hard. But at the same time, I mean, it's really interesting that that happened to him. And I think it's actually really important because a lot of what the demon slayers do is done in the shadows. They aren't really something that's like government recognized or anything like that that we're aware of. At least not in any way that like your average person on the street knows about. Maybe higher powers do or something. Especially considering we learn here that Kaguya was actually able to get Gyomei removed from prison and end up not having him be executed. So there is a possibility for that at a higher level, but man on the street, not so much. And I think that it's really important to see the humanity of what he felt he needed and everything. The other thing that's really fascinating about Gyomei and this situation is the reality that this situation is actually one of the reasons that he actually was able to become as strong as he did, because his whole training situation that he has the different like Slayer Corps people going through is actually about having them be able to take whatever personal struggle or pain that they dealt with and that led them to become demon slayers to begin with, and actually be able to channel that as a combat resource. And for Tanjiro, who has actually experienced, as I said, something very similar to what Gyomei went through in his own way, that actually probably works really well. So that's that part. I think it's interesting to talk a bit about what was going on with Giyu and with the Wind Hashira, because I really despise that guy. But when I think about what I was just saying about Gyomei, whom I super like, and then I think about the response and reactions of the Wind Hashira, I mean, while I find him unlikable as a character and I find him really annoying, I can only imagine how he must feel about some of the stuff that he has experienced, and the thing is, not everybody actually deals with that kind of thing in the same way. So he probably doesn't actually handle the aspects of his past that he endured very well, and they've obviously made him very angry. And then, seeing any kind of kindness from somebody, whether it is Genya trying to make up with him, whether it's Tanjiro offering him food, or whatever else it might be, he ends up just pushing all of that away because he has experienced the betrayal of a loved one being turned into a demon, aka his mom, he's also dealing with the reality, I'm sure he knows full well, that his brother consumes demons to be able to utilize his power, which, given how the Wind Hashira feels about demons, which we saw in season 1 with Nezuko, that probably absolutely disgusts him. So, I mean, he's dealing with his own crap. I mean, he's not my favorite by any stretch. I just really don't like him. But I mean, I can understand where he's coming from. And then to see him pitted against Giyu, who has been dealing with essentially the feeling of like imposter syndrome as a water Hashira and everything, is also really interesting. And their little tough that we got to see was pretty good overall. I mean, we didn't see a lot of fighting this episode. This episode was definitely much more emotionally based. But I think we're going to see a lot more craziness next week, so that'll probably work out for the best. Last up, of course, we have to talk about that ending sequence because holy crap, dude, that was amazing. Just the way that like energy or smoke or mist or whatever was just rising up and just pushing away from Muzan, that was really freaking cool. And the way he just walked through the place like he owned it, like he knew who he was, like he knew what his destiny was, like he knew exactly what was going to go down, and like he was 1000% in control, was absolutely captivating. He had absolute stage presence. It was just wow. And then the thing is, his entrance in that regard is super cool, but I actually really want to praise Kaguya and his wife, because to me their reaction to him was equally stunning, and each of them in their own way. You got to consider the reality that Kaguya is on death's door. Kaguya does not have much longer to live. Even if Muzan had decided to take a 2-week stay in Hawaii, Kaguya would probably already be dead. Kaguya is not in a good spot. But despite the fact that all of this craziness is going on around him and everything, Kaguya actually has the balls to just say hello when he realizes that it's Muzan who showed up. And of course, Muzan being Muzan is like, you look like shit. Because holy crap, bro, he does. But I mean, Muzan's just saying it to rub it in. But the person I really want to give some praise to here is actually Kaguya's wife. I believe her name is Amane. And I was really impressed with how she behaved, because so often in modern culture we talk about the idea of girl power or of strong female characters, and for some reason we always talk about this as if a woman into and of herself, by herself, needs to be strong and powerful in a physical way that we would generally equate with a male superhero. And I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. I've got no qualms with a girl kicking some butt. That's totally fine. But that is not the only way that a woman can showcase strength. And in my opinion, the kind of strength that Amane shows at the end of this episode is extremely valuable and extremely underutilized in modern culture. Amane is powerful because she basically falls into this old Frankie Lane song called "Do Not Forsake Me, Oh My Darling," because she stands beside Kaguya, well, she kneels beside him technically, and she's just sitting there holding his hands, staring forward. No tears, no trembling, no thought of running, no thought of leaving. She knows where she is and why she is there, regardless of whether or not she has fighting prowess, which we have no idea of either way. But she is there and she is going to stay put. And I mean, considering that these two characters probably think they are literally on death's door, whether medically or just directly because Muzan is there, that is impressive, because the only thing to me that shows more courage than somebody who is able to fight is someone who is able to stand their ground, even if they know that there is absolutely nothing they can do about what they're facing. The idea of being able to face death, eyeball to eyeball, makes it lose power over us. Whether we die or not is irrelevant. It is whether or not we actually die with dignity. And these two characters, I'm pretty damn sure, are about to do that. But those are my thoughts on the episode. I'd love to know what you guys thought, because I thought this was pretty damn good, all things considered. Anyway, drop a comment below and let me know, and I'll talk to you guys in the next video. Looks like we got a lot to look forward to next week. We got a 60-minute slot. This is going to be crazy. Talk to you later. Bye!